Hey guys, welcome to this week's episode. Last week we talked about scouting, three major factors when scouting a property, and the week before that we were talking about creating depth. But actually today we finally started implementing that project. We cut probably 6 trees today, 6 big trees on the hillside, and we worked our way back down into this food plot. This food plot here is what I want to talk about today. So today's topic, we're going to be discussing how to find an area to put a food plot. This is a pretty small fall blend food plot. It's a radish plot that we planted last season. We've cut quite a few trees in here. Actually, we're still cutting trees today. I've cut 2 more in here, and we're working our way around the edges, and we're trying to widen this thing out. And once we figure out how wide we're going to go with this food plot, then we'll actually go ahead and we'll start edge feathering it, creating depth on the side of the food plot, so it'll be a transition from thick forage like woody browse and grasses and stuff into this fall food plot for 2021 season. So pretty exciting stuff. But before you can even get to this stage, you need to figure out where you're going to put your food plot. So today I want to go ahead and we'll discuss how to look for a food plot location and what are the best areas. In my opinion, you need to have good access before anything else. So this spot here, this is easy access. There's a creek only 40 yards from where I'm standing, and there's a huge embankment that I can climb up, and I got a blind down here at the end of this food plot, and I just walk up the embankment, crawl on my blind, and then I can see this whole hillside, fall food plot, and then all the way down this trail behind the camera. This spot's easy to get in and out of without spooking deer. I always put the wind over the creek, that way I'm not bumping deer. Every once in a while I'll get a deer that'll come down the creek, but honestly that's the least of my worries. With the creek being cooler in temperature, the thermals, no matter what time of day it is, it's always going to want to go down towards the water with it being cooler. So anytime I'm accessing my blinds or stands through the creek, it's almost foolproof unless you literally bump a big mature buck as you're walking through the water. Not likely, can happen, but I'll take those odds over walking halfway through this property and blowing out every deer and leaving a scent trail behind. So access is key, and then you need to figure out where these deer are transitioning from bed to a major food source, whether that's an ag field or maybe you have a hay field. Could be anything, could be winter wheat or whatever in your area is a big destination food source. And sometimes during certain parts of the year, it might just be an oak flat, or maybe you have an apple orchard or something on your property. So you need to figure out where they're going. This trail here, well, it used to be a trail, now it's a food plot. This used to be a major transition along the creek where deer would go all the way up and down this creek side here. They can use the hills, they can use the thermals, they can scan, they can see very well out here. So they would use this to transition from their bedding areas back up the hill here out into the major ag field. Whether that's beans or corn that year, it depends. They rotate each year, so either way, it doesn't really matter what the grain is, they're going to be hitting it. That's still going to be the destination food source. So I knew this was the main travel route, but you don't want to just randomly build your food plot in the middle of this. You need to figure out which side you want to be on. Do you want to be closer to the bedding, or do you want to be closer to the ag? And that's actually going to depend on wind, not so much intrusion, because you already know you have easy access. No matter where I access this, I'm only coming in 40 yards off the creek. So I know my access is good regardless. Now where I set the food plot up, where I want my mock scrapes and where I want the primary food source is going to depend on wind direction. So for this plot, blinds all the way down here at the end. The major food source is here, but it will pinch and funnel more towards their bedding back that way, towards the transition route. So I know they're going to come from bedding, they're going to transition through here. I'm going to be able to use the wind. I'll be downwind, and they're going to be heading to that major food source. They'll stop here to get a bite on the way. So when creating a food plot, access is the number one, and then you need to figure out your stand location, which winds you can hunt. And sometimes when you're creating a food plot, don't get it stuck in your head that you have to hunt over the food source. Say I build this killer food source here, I know it's going to be hot, and then they're going to transition to that ag field, but I don't have a good wind to hunt this. Well, that's okay. If you have a good wind halfway down the trail before they get to the major food source, you're just using this food plot as a drawing power to get them to come through here It's going to define their movement, and then you can be set up, another 50 to 100 yards down this trail. So you don't have to hunt over the food sources. Actually, I recommend you don't if you don't have killer access, because once you spook these out, the deer will turn nocturnal. They'll keep hitting these, but it's only going to be at night, and you're going to more than likely kick most of the deer off your property really early in the season, like September, October, depending on which states you're in, when your season opens up. So definitely make sure that you can hunt them before you put a stand on them. You don't have to hunt over the food source. Keep that in mind too. The food source is just to draw them in. This is the drawing power right here. When this thing was green and lush with turnips and cereal rye, there were big bucks coming in here every other day. That didn't necessarily mean I was hunting this every day. Now, yes, on prime days, perfect wind, I was definitely down here. When I was using the thermals in the afternoon, this was a killer setup. Don't think anytime you implement a food plot that you necessarily have to sit over it. That's the second thing. So you got your access, you got your wind direction, you don't have to hunt over the food source necessarily. And the third and last thing when making a food plot is to analyze where all you're going to be hunting that season. And what I mean by that is if you know you're going to be hunting up in the bedding area in November, you need to also design this food plot so you're not walking through your food plot to get to your November stands. Doesn't matter if maybe you got, even if you hunt that on into December, I don't care, or maybe that's your pre-rut phase, maybe that's your October 24th through the first week of November. You cannot be accessing your November stands by coming through these food sources, or that you're going to kill these food sources. Say you don't get your target buck in November and you're relying on these for late season. Well, guess what? You've already blown these out during November, and now your late season is going to be, that much harder for you. So you want your food sources to be the drawing power for early October. You also want them to be a drawing power for November, and I want them to draw on into January. So by doing that, I need to design these knowing how I'm going to access my other stands. So the great thing about this is where this food plot is here, I don't have to come through here to get to my November sets. There's a trail way down there. I come through a creek and there's a tiny little trail, and it's the only trail I have to cross where I know deer are on it, but I wear rubber boots. There's no tall grasses. It's bare dirt there. I made sure I left that one spot bare dirt when I'm walking through there. So yeah, I'm gonna leave a little scent trail, but I'm not gonna be coming through my food sources. I'm not gonna be leaving a ton of scent in my major food source, spooking these out. So keep that in mind whenever you're creating a food plot. You don't want to be walking through your food sources to check cameras, to get to other stand locations. It's just going to ruin your food source. It's going to defeat the whole purpose of why we want to design these things to begin with. So got to have access, got to have the right wind. You don't want to spook these out. You need to make sure they're in the right location. You don't have to go through them. And we're going to touch more on like how to check trail cameras on food sources, and maybe where you should specifically place a stand on your food source as we get rolling on later into our off-season preparation. I just wanted to talk about the 3 main tips today for creating a food source and what to look for when designing a food plot. I hope this helps you guys out, and I'm looking forward to getting this food source done and showing you as we move on to edge feathering and everything, and maybe changing our stand location a little bit. I'm actually going to move the blind. I'm going to explain why we're moving the blind, and I hope this stuff really starts to click with you guys and I can help you out this off season. Remember, if you're going to build a food source, don't just look for the easiest spot to put in a food plot. Look for access, look for where the deer are actually traveling, and hope this helps you guys out. Thanks again for tuning in on this week's episode. We'll be back next Friday, guys.